So that's where seed oils come from. They are this foreign thing to the human diet that we never supposed to be eating. And we eat, they now comprise about 25 to 30% of the average American's total calories. We're talking people eat kilograms and kilograms of seed oils.
Hey, everybody. We've had some of the most incredible guests coming to you these past couple of months. The amount of expertise and knowledge on these cutting edge topics is something we really hope that you enjoy. And if you do, it would make a huge difference to us if you could rate, review, and subscribe the podcast. It helps us to get more guests, better experts, and talk about all of the things that are really important to you. So give us a love, give us a lot of love, and don't forget to subscribe so you get all our new episodes. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast. I'm Rachel, and I have a awesome guest for you today on a topic that is super hot everywhere on the internet. I am running into everybody and anybody who's in the health space talking about seed oils. So I brought you the seed oil guy. You are the seed oil guy, are you not, Stephen?
I would say one of many, but certainly one of many. Yes.
So, Stephen, you were brought up in a very sort of old school, traditional Italian American family. You guys ate, everything was around food. And you consider yourself a bit of a foodie, but struggled with some chronic health issues growing up and went on a quest of obsessive research, as you call it. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about your backstory and how you became the seed oil guy?
Sure. Yeah. Like you said, I never had major health problems, but like enough to be very inconvenient. For example, when I was a kid, going and playing sports was like soccer was difficult because my nose was always running. I had allergies. You know, I would get sick a lot in 8th grade. I got the flu, and then I got the swine flu 2 weeks later. That was like swine flu era. So I had always had immune system issues growing up. Unclear why, antibiotics, vaccines, who knows what. But I had these mild, annoying health problems that, from my perspective, were just a fact of life. I didn't really consider that there was any alternative. And it was just, learn to live with it, bring tissues around, get to sleep early, because especially if you have a lot of work to do, you don't want to get sick, etc. So when I was in college, I had an occasion to be doing an internship in Belgium, where they don't have a dining hall. And given that my mom had cooked everything before I ever ate before I went to college, and then I ate at the dining hall when I was in college, I had to cook for myself for the first time. And so I wasn't trying to eat healthy. I just figured out that when I eat certain things that I cooked, I felt better or worse, and sort of put the pieces together, because for the first time, being able to see what was in the pan, in the oven, and then in my plate, and then how I felt after, I could put these connections together. So I quickly realized that if I could feel better eating certain things than others, then I should try to eat more of those things and figure out what made that work. I think paleo diet was popular at the time. This was around 2014. So I stumbled into that. I started doing that specifically, like actively. And I think within 2 weeks, my chronic congestion and allergies sort of just went away, like out of thin air. It just disappeared. And that really got me hooked. And I just dove headfirst into a sort of obsessive interest in nutrition and health and cooking and eating and food preparation and all these things that, of course, we all talk about today.
So what's more motivating, obviously, than like realizing that you can sort of solve your own chronic health issues that
Right.
have been plaguing you forever? I think that is an amazing background to where you're at today, mm-hmm. which you went full tilt. Like this was not a hobby.
Oh, yeah. Well, it might have been for a little bit, but I went back, finished college, and continued. I had a studio apartment that was like 300 square feet. I was brewing kombucha. I was making sourdough bread. I would like put my dough together and put the sourdough starter in it, and then go out on a Saturday night, come back at 1 a.m. and then like knead my dough and let it rise until Sunday morning, when I would put it in the oven and bake it.
Classic college. boy, right?
This, yeah. As a 20 something, like 21-year-old or something. And then, yeah, there was a sprouting phase. I sprouted broccoli seeds and I sprouted quinoa, sprouted all sorts of things. I made kefir. There was really good dairy in the town where I went to school. And so I made really good kefir, uh, all of this like craziness. Um, and ultimately, I graduated, I got a job as a software engineer, and that career path, at least at that time, afforded me ample opportunity for spare time. So I would always be going to the farmer's market and cooking and doing more of this kind of thing. At some point, I had a bet with my friend to that we would both like start making TikToks. This is in 2021, and TikTok was popular. It's like, well, if anyone can be famous on TikTok, why can't we? So we both he did his own thing, and I did my health thing, and I made a video every day for 80 days. And by the end of that, I had around 100,000 followers talking about ancestral health and Weston Price specifically, along with seed oils and tanning and all sorts of other topics. And that was the kind of eye-opening thing for me, because I would see the comments of people talking, and a lot of them would say, yeah, okay, I understand all this, blah blah blah, but like I don't have spare time. I don't like, what are you, unemployed? Which basically it was, although I wasn't. I have a job. I can't go around driving to farmers markets and picking up raw milk and like cooking all these crazy things. And so that sort of led me to this opinion. It led me to the realization, rather, that the key to getting people healthy is not just knowledge alone, right? We can talk about all this stuff till we're blue in the face, but if we don't make healthy things convenient and desirable in everyday life, then people won't adopt them. And so I started questioning my choice to, continue spending my efforts on content and whatnot, and started thinking about what kind of, if I could start a company or start a product or sell things or make things that would actually make it easier for people to be healthy. A few months later, that idea sort of fell in my lap. I was hanging out with a few friends after New Year's. This is right at the beginning of 2022. And one of them was eating Tostitos, I think, and I was giving him crap for it, right? Because I'm like a seed oil influencer, and someone in my house eating, Tostitos. How could you? But he had the same objection everyone else has, right? Like, well, what else am I supposed to eat? If there's healthy chips, they probably taste bad, and I don't have time to go cook a whole meal. I want something simple. And I started describing to him how he could actually, like, there could be tortilla chips that you could eat that would be good. And I was just making this up on the spot. I was like, oh, you'd probably want to fry it in beef tallow, organic corn, this and that. And he subsequently asked me where he could go buy them. And I answered that there's nowhere. No one makes them. But not being, good enough of an answer, I suppose, he challenged me to go make them myself, which a few months later I did. And that prototype of that chip that I made, tortilla chip, I made in my parents' backyard with a propane fired turkey fryer, a box of grass fed tallow, and some organic tortillas. That prototype was ultimately what became Moss Chips, which I sell, and they're tallow fried tortilla chips, and we've been selling those for 3 years.
Dude, I mean, that is an awesome startup story if I've ever heard one. I so appreciate the convenient and desirable.
Mm-hmm.
Those two, and not one without the other.
Correct.
Um, like that is what is missing in the
Mm-hmm.
health food space: convenient and desirable.
Right. Because I
It's
think if something's convenient, like there's plenty of things that are convenient. Like there's a lot of healthy, not to, throw shade on any particular brands, but there's like healthy snacks or whatever. And if they're healthy in the first place, which I doubt, but whatever, they market themselves healthy, that's their thing. They taste like crap, and like no one wants them. No one wants to roll into the function with the bag of healthy chips, as it were. No one wants to be that guy or gal. And so you have this convenience, you can go buy it at a store, but it's like no one wants this. And on the other hand, there's plenty of desirable, good tasting health food, right? I'm sure anyone who's been around social media the past few years in the health space knows that, you can go eat butter and steak and, fruit and all these things that are just inherently delicious. And like raw milk is delicious, like this is not a controversial thing, right? Like all of these foods, sourdough bread is delicious, but finding and or making all of these things tends to be very difficult. And so working people, parents, whoever, it tends to be hard for them to get it. So we're stuck in this world where we have to try really, really, really hard in order to get things that are healthy, and or fight our willpower and like force ourselves to eat things that are gross, which I would also contend are not actually that healthy. It's kind of like it's kind of crazy if you think about, say, your great grandparents or grandparents or whoever living in the 50s and 60s. Did they have Weight Watchers? No. Do they have CrossFit? No. Do they work out? No. They didn't even run. Running, like going for a run, was seen as like you would belong in an insane asylum before the 70s when Nike started and like kind of popularized the activity of running for exercise or hobby. Prior to that, running literally happened if you were a like track athlete at a prep school or maybe a college. Like there was no running. Like a normal person just didn't run unless you were like running from something trying to attack you, right? Like that just didn't happen. So this whole myth that, oh, people exercise, we exercise less. They No, they didn't exercise. Exercise wasn't even an activity that you could do, up until really the 80s, I think. Um, they took the trains, sure, to go commute, but they had cars back then. Anyway, they didn't do Weight Watchers. They didn't go to health food. There wasn't like 20 different types of eggs for them to sort through. There wasn't 20 different types of milk. There wasn't 20 different types of bread. They just went to the food store and bought the food that was there and ate it. And their life was, and they were healthy because of it, because that food happened to be healthy. So the convenient, desirable things that they were surrounded by were healthy. Now that's not the case, and therefore everyone's sick, right? Because we default into the standard patterns and way of life that our culture is built to support. And if the culture is built to support unhealthy things, then and we're surrounded by unhealthy influences, then we're just going to be naturally unhealthy. And it takes a lot of work to fight that, which some people, and I'm sure many of your audience and you and me, of course, will do. But for every one of us, there's 10 people who won't. And those people will continue to suffer unless we do something about the very fabric of society in which we live.
I think I think there's so many good points there, and I think that the one I kind of want to hone in on is the idea that there are a lot of people that are willing to go sort of the extra mile and want to include more nutritious food into their life. And we
Mm-hmm.
have an entire industry built on that.
Mm-hmm.
And you hit on this a couple of minutes ago with the health foods that aren't really healthy.
Right.
And I want to give you an opportunity to kind of dispel this, because we have a lot of the worst thing to me is when you have well-meaning people that are willing to go that extra mile, that want to, that
Oh yeah.
doing the thing, and then they're being tricked into
Yeah.
paying extra for these things that are not the things that they say they are. So can you
Right.
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. It's very unfortunate the way society is basically set up for the people who don't care are getting poisoned, because they don't care and they just do the default thing. But then the people who do care half the time are also getting poisoned because they're misled by some marketing or whatever. And so everyone stays sick, even the people that are trying not to be, which is very frustrating, as you mentioned. I think a little bit of history might be in order. So at a long time ago, whenever that is, before industrial food and pesticides and all these, chemicals and processes, food was healthy. People not were not always healthy, in part because food was not abundant. So they're like, if you had a problem with food 200 years ago, it was because you didn't have enough of it. No one today doesn't have enough quantity of food. There's food everywhere. There's more food than we can eat. America wastes about a third of all food produced every year. Like there's more food than anyone can even eat. So people were sick, but they were sick because they got, some injury that they couldn't treat, or because they were starving and nutrient deprived because they just didn't have enough quantity of food. However, the food that they did have was very high quality. And so a lot of recipes that we know and love were invented in this pre-industrial world. For example, the concept of a French fry, or dare I say, a potato chip, or a steak, or a burger, whatever. All these recipes are not that old, right? Or sorry, they're not that young. They were all invented before the 50s and the agricultural revolution, or the green revolution with pesticides and all these things. So the recipes that we had were delicious and they were healthy. And the reason why is because humans over time, having not infinite time and not infinite access to food, had to choose which recipes to perpetuate. And they chose the recipes that were both delicious and healthy, naturally. Why else would you spend effort in a world without electricity and running water to cook things that were neither delicious nor healthy? Like, you wouldn't do that. So what happened, that's the recipes we all know and love: ice cream, all these things. But what happened was, over time, as technology allowed for them to use alternative ingredients and methods in the interest of cutting costs, if you will, they replaced those ingredients in those recipes with things that are bad for us. And over time, people came to associate the badness not with the ingredients that were bad, but with the recipe itself. And so this comedy, they're like, oh, potato chips are bad, burgers and fries are bad. You know, if I give you a piece of sourdough bread, a tomato, and some grass-fed beef, you would say that's a healthy dinner. But all of a sudden, if I put the grass-fed beef in on a bun and mash up the tomato and put it on top of the meat, and it's a burger, and all of a sudden that's bad, right? Like, how does that make sense? If I gave you potatoes and grass-fed beef tallow or butter or something, you would say, oh, that's a healthy carb, right? But all of a sudden, you put it in a little cardboard red and white striped container, and I serve it to you at a fast food restaurant, and it's a junk food. How did that happen, right? It's not. But what happened was that the ingredients that were incorporated into that recipe, the tallow was replaced with seed oils, for example, or the grass-fed beef becomes this like horrible factory farmed slop, or the cheese is like made in a lab or something, or the bread has the wheat has pesticides on it and it's not sourdough or whatever. All of a sudden, the meal looks the same, the recipe looks the same from the outside, but it's been corrupted from within, and you can't tell. But people could tell they feel bad when eating it, and so that birthed this whole idea of junk food. So the response to this, of course, then was not let's fix the ingredients. The response was, oh, this entire food category is bad. Burgers and fries are bad. Let's not eat them. So instead, we're going to eat kale and cassava and chia seeds and all this other BS, right? And that is the category from which these unhealthy health foods spring up. We throw out the entire culinary heritage of our society in favor of these weird alternatives that your grandparents ever ate. Like, did your grandparents eat avocados? Doubt it. Did they eat coconut oil? Did they eat chia seeds? Did they eat kale? No, they probably haven't really heard of these things. Um, and so that's not to say that all of those like coconut oil is bad for you, but the key insight is we need to just make the foods of our ancestors the right way. And when you do that, you benefit from the same things they benefited from. It's delicious, it's healthy. In many cases, it's more sustainable, right? Importing coconut oil or avocados from foreign countries is a lot worse than the beef that's down the street from the cattle rancher. That cattle is grown in all 50 states, right? Um, Chickens, eggs, milk, you can get it all in every state. They produce it, and they can produce it. So I think that's the real problem here, and people fall into this trap, like we said before, of this like complete rejection of traditional food, and instead focus on these like newfangled health things that have no business in our heritage, right? They're completely novel. They're introduced just in the same way that seed oils are new to our diet. So is cassava flour, you know, or tiger nut. What the hell even is a tiger nut? Um, so I think the solution then is don't throw out the recipes, find the right way of making them, and you'll be okay. I'm happy to give specific examples if that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I want to let you give a little insight into seed oils as an example of
Mm.
our traditional food and sort of taking that, revamping it,
Yeah,
like Frankenizing, it's a Frankenstein version. And I want to let you give a little insight into where seed oils play into that. Where are people finding seed oils in the typical foods that they're eating that they may not even be aware of? And what is the issue with using seed oil rather than some of the other methods, butter, beef tallow, the things you mentioned?
cool. So yeah, in a similar vein, seed oils did not exist like 150 years ago. That's important for people to understand. This is a completely new category of object, really. Not even food. It was not made. So America produced a lot of cotton back in the day. And as a byproduct of this, there's a lot of cotton seeds, which are kind of useless, and they get in the way of the cotton, and they kind of pile up, and you have to just throw them out. But the American cotton industry, after the Industrial Revolution, started making a ton of cotton, and so these seeds were piling up. And so people looked for things that they could do to maybe say get some money out of them. They tried pressing oil out of them. There were a few patents from the mid 1800s about devices that could get oil out of them, but no one even thought to use them as food because they had toxic substances within them. Gossipol is one of them. Weird thing, I've never heard of that before, but when I learned about this, there and a few certain oils. Basically, it's no good for much. And oil also at the time was commonly used to make soap, and so they couldn't even make soap out of it. It was like foamy and slimy and weird. So not really much they could do with it until in 1912, some guy, a German immigrant in the US, invented a way of turning that soap solid by a process called hydrogenation, which anyone around here, I'm sure, has heard of hydrogenated vegetable oil. That's what this is. It takes a liquid oil and makes it solid. And so Procter and Gamble, being a big soap company, always looking for a way to find a cheaper fat or oil, in order to make their soap. They snapped up this patent, and they, were going to use it to make soap. But they also realized, hey, wait, this looks a lot like lard. We should try to sell this as food. And so you have to understand, at that time in the U.S., the only fats used for cooking were not olive oil, were butter, beef tallow, and lard. There was no olive oil. There was no avocado oil. The Italians had not yet come and brought the olive oil to the U.S. That olive oil wasn't really even popular outside of Italian immigrant communities until the 70s and 80s. So olive oil wasn't a thing. Avocado oil wasn't a thing. Coconut oil and palm oil certainly were not a thing. So it was literally only these three fats, which were all solid, that were used as cooking fats by Americans and Western Europeans from the dawn of time up until this point. And so this thing, Crisco, which looked like lard, they thought, hey, maybe we could sell this. And so they tried to sell it as food. They did a whole bunch of marketing. It worked for whatever reason. Well, whatever reason, they spent a lot of money on marketing, and that's why it worked. But it worked, and that was the first seed oil product ever consumed by humans in any large quantity ever in all of history, right? Anywhere. You could have a little bit of sesame seed oil here and there as a seasoning for dishes in Japan. There are a few like niche examples of people making small batch artisanal oils, but as a high volume ingredient in the human diet, this was the first time vegetable oils were ever used. So to right off the bat, people think like, oh, we should eat like our ancestors, eat as we evolved, paleo, whatever, that idea. Obviously, this entire category of food should be excluded because it was never used at all. Um, anyway, a few more decades passed. Crisco was a big thing. And then during World War II, a lot of seed oil based oils were used for the industrial apparatus of World War II because they make adequate machinery lubricants. And so in Canada, for example, they grew a lot of rape seeds, and rapeseed oil was used as a machinery lubricant in World War II. In the US, corn oil was used as a machinery lubricant in World War II. And after the war, they had all this infrastructure around producing these oils that they didn't want to go away, so they were looking for something to do with it. And scientists did their thing, and they figured out a few tweaks to some processing here and there, and they realized, oh, we could probably make this into a form that we could sell for people to eat. And so they did, and that's why the liquid seed oils started to be marketed in the 50s after World War II, and that continued until the modern day, and that's where all the fake idea that saturated fat is bad and polyunsaturated fats are good and vegetable oils are good and heart healthy, all of that happened in the second half of the 20th century because these people had leftover war industry apparatus that they tried to redirect into the American food supply. All this is true. You can read about much of this in a very good book written a few years ago called "The Big Fat Surprise" by this journalist who goes through and discovers all this history and writes about it. So that's where seed oils come from, which I think is important to understand, because when you think about, oh, is it good for you? Is it bad for you? This study, that study. I can come up with a study, and if you're trying to argue against me, you come up with another study. And then you come up with a study, and then I'll find a different study. And so the studies are very, I would say, not conclusive by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously, I think they point to a certain conclusion, and other people who are paid by the seed oil industry, of course, will think a different thing. But the point is, this was not a food that anyone ever ate, and it was bought and paid for and pushed into existence by Procter and Gamble mostly, which is one of the largest, at least during this time, one of the largest companies in America, if not the world. So that's where seed oils come from. They are this foreign thing to the human diet that we never supposed to be eating. And we eat, they now comprise about 25 to 30% of the average American's total calories. Total. Like a third of what you eat comes from seed oils, is seed oils basically, which is insane, obviously. And then, so it is by far the single largest processed or artificial ingredient that anyone ever eats, right? You eat Red 40. Red 40 is bad, of course, but guess what? You eat like a few milligrams of Red 40 in a year if you eat Skittles and M&Ms every day. We're talking people eat kilograms and kilograms of seed oils because it's in everything. It's in the food at the restaurant. It's in the deep fryer. It's in fried foods. It's in snacks. It's in salad dressings. They put it in all like soy milk and almond milk and freaking oat milk. It's in oat milks. It's in candy. It's in People use it in the home. It's in baking. A lot of people like bake products. Oh, we need to get the canola oil for my cake or banana bread that I'm going to go make. It's in baked products. So yeah, a third of all calories consumed are seed oil calories. Um, and obviously, people have observed the status of the health of their fellow people that they live around today. I'm not saying seed oils is the only thing that causes health problems, of course, but if you think about in terms of the volume of consumption, it's by far the biggest artificial thing we consume on a daily basis.
Little hint for all my besties, and I'm only telling you guys, so keep it down. We have a surprise release on the site today. My girlies who love their weights before dates, guys, hit up the site today for a surprise release. I think you are going to absolutely love it, but don't tell anybody. I wanted to ask you about, in general, the feeling of not being able to eat anything, of
Mhm.
just like a new thing coming every single year that is
Yeah.
like, this is the thing that's killing you. We finally figured it out. And by the end, you have a list that's 4 pages long of things you're trying to avoid at the grocery store.
Mhm.
And it makes it impossible to shop, and it makes it feel like you need a PhD to even get like
Right.
to the checkout.
Yeah.
So I think that, having that knowledge that yes, there are artificial dyes that are out there, and this in there, and you're consuming these things and you're consuming them in fairly small amounts. But the thing that is alarming about this is anytime you tell me 1/3 of my calories is coming from this one thing,
Mhm.
that's a full stop.
It's a big amount. It's larger than any other thing by far. And I think it's a very good point. You said like all the things that we can't eat at the grocery store. A lot of those things happen to be what are they? They're processed food ingredients, right? And they happen to most of the time be in foods that also contain seed oils. So seed oils are sort of like we know processed food, right? Seed oils are the first and highest and best and largest processed food ingredient. There would not be processed foods without seed oils, honestly. Like the involvement of seed oils creates the food that makes it processed, right? When a potato chip is fried in beef tallow, which is it's an activity you could do 500 years ago with like a campfire and a knife and a cow and a potato, you know, you could that is not a processed food. That's just food, you know. Um, but by adding the seed oil into that thing and creating a potato chip fried in seed oils, now it's processed food. Same thing with French fries. Same thing with like a salad dressing, for example, mayonnaise. If I put egg yolks in olive oil and vinegar and stir it up, I just made food. But if I throw soybean oil in it, that's processed food now. Um, Candy, same thing. If I take cocoa beans and like heat them up and do the thing and like mix it with a little bit of sugar and whatever, is that a processed food or is that just what like South Americans would have eaten, 300 years ago or something? Um, but I start putting sunflower lecithin and soy lecithin, which of course are byproducts of seed oil production and all these other crazy things. Now it's processed food. So in short, what I'm trying to say is seed oils and processed foods are almost like synonyms, not completely, but they almost mean the same thing. So if you were trying to avoid processed foods, avoiding seed oils is kind of the same thing. And if you do that, you'll also end up avoiding most of the horrible other types of ingredients like the dyes and all these other things that we talk about. You'll end up avoiding those too because they just won't be in them because they're not processed foods. I think the thing with the grocery store is like buy things that are ingredients, a tomato, a piece of beef, whatever, things that don't have an ingredient list on them, or things that do have an ingredient list where those ingredients are also things that you could buy in the produce section or the meat section. That's basically it. So if you stick to that rule, it's very simple. Now I'm not saying there's a lot of options, especially depending on which grocery store you go to, but um, you can eat a full and rich diet provided you stick to those simple rules. And honestly, like ignore the rest. Ignore the is this too much is this too many carbs, is too much protein or not enough protein, or too much fat or not enough fat. The human metabolism is incredibly adaptive. And there have been people that have survived on a super high fat diet. There have been people who have survived on eating plain sweet potatoes and literally nothing else. There are people who eat a lot of meat. There's people who eat less meat. Um, There's people who eat a lot of fish. There's people who eat no fish. There's all the sort of macronutrient things. Like there's examples from anthropological history of people that ate that combination. But what none of those people ate in our heritage at all is these processed fake ingredients. So avoid those as like the first step. And I think that's a pretty easy rule to remember, and I think you'll be fine if you do.
I want to talk about convenience in a second because I do think that is, as just coming full circle, talking in the beginning about why many people are struggling in this area and convenience being a major factor there. But before we get there, I just want to talk about some potential health red flags that we might be
Mhm.
seeing from our excessive consumption of seed oil.
Sure. So first of all, they make you obese, or they make it easier to be obese and harder to become unobese if you are obese. The reason being, what they are a toxic molecule. So when they're broken down, the byproducts of that breaking down are damaging to cells, and so the cells, when trying to break them down as energy, for energy, end up like little mitochondria that do that end up kind of getting damaged in the process, and so the body is both unable to produce as much energy with them, and when it does try to do so, it tears itself apart. And so a lot of seed oils end up in the body fat because it's kind of like this place where we can store toxic stuff for, to deal with later. The body never does deal with it later because we never stop eating them. And then we just end up building and building our body fat. So 100 years ago, the human body fat tissue was mostly resembled beef tallow, actually. It resembled the fat of a cow or a similar kind of animal. There were no unsaturated or polyunsaturated fats, which are the type of fat in seed oils, in human body fat. Nowadays, human body fat tissue is like 20% polyunsaturated fat. Like the composition of our fat changed based on the fat that we ate. And so the body kind of stores it there because it's this toxic thing it doesn't want. And so it makes you fat, and it reduces our metabolism because it makes it harder for us to produce energy as our mitochondria are damaged from trying to burn it. Um, so that's a major thing. Any sort of inflammation issue, for example, many cancers, macular degeneration. There's a lot of research on this. Alzheimer's, also a lot of research on this. Any sort of like the tissues are dying from oxidation and oxidative stress. Skin cancer is another one. That is like IBS. Also, my gut doesn't work because my intestines are freaking out because they're inflamed. That is also not caused entirely by, but seed oils play a big part in those issues. So I would summarize those are the two main things, like just being overweight, and then just general inflammation disorders, whether it's acne, skin cancer, other cancers, macular degeneration, IBS, all sorts of inflammation, oxidative stress problems. And the reason why it sounds like so all encompassing is because the molecule, it's not like a pharmaceutical, which is designed to target a certain protein or whatever. Seed oils, their byproducts are just damaging to biological tissue. And so wherever they go in your body, they'll just cause problems. And so whether it's in your eyeball or your brain or your liver or your intestine, it's just going to cause problems. And so you get all these fancy names for all these quote unquote disorders, but it's really just like I have this destructive thing everywhere permeating my body, and it causes problems wherever it goes.
Dude, it's so wild to think of a singular it's like a destructor, and it's really interesting that it manifests differently in everyone's body, but truly is we can kind of come back to all the same cause
Mhm.
being, in like an inflamed society.
Yeah.
Everyone is dealing with some level of inflammation, and we're all trying to find what is the inflammation causer.
Mhm.
Is it stress? Is it environmental factors?
Mhm.
Is it your opinion that a good amount of inflammation that we see in our population that manifests to disease is is the byproduct of eating so much seed oils?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, it's like 30% of our calories. It's not the only thing, of course, right? The
Mhm.
screens, the blue light, the EMF, the chemicals in the water, chemical pharmaceuticals, the air pollution, the water pollution, the microplastics, um, the heavy metals, the mold, the mycotoxins, the pesticides in the food, the pesticides in the air, the pesticides in the groundwater, sitting around too much. I mean, even exercising too much also, like that's also can be stressful without a proper recovery. Um, there's a lot of things that are not healthy for us that we are surrounded by. But if you really want to add it all up and sort of like calculate what's the most impactful, I would say that's got to be pretty close to the top.
Do you ever feel a sense of hopelessness in this like quest to maximize the health of your body while it's here, and the amount of things that you have to fight against in order to do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, on the one hand, no, because we're doing it and it's like it's working. We have produced and sold over 2 million bags of chips in the 3 years since we've been around, which is a lot of freaking bags of chips. um, and growth shows no signs of slowing. I think the food industry, I think the packaged food industry, pretty much can just be rebuilt with the recipes as they were supposed to be. Um, I think there's definitely a financial question because a lot of doing this stuff is a bit more expensive. But at the same time, people have to understand that their grandparents in 1960 or something, the average American spent 30% of their income on food, a third, and today it's about 11%. So we spend so your grandma or great grandma, or whoever it was, spent 3 times as much relative to her household income on feeding her family 60 years ago versus what we would spend today. And before that, what do you mean household income? They were farmers. Before that, 97% of humans were farmers. And so it's like you spend all your time and all your income just trying to feed your family. So this idea that we can expect to get well fed in quality and abundance for negligible cost is kind of crazy. And so people need to realize that like, hey, you're going to either spend money on your food or you're going to spend money and lose money from being sick. Not only the emotional and physical cost of being sick, but also like the financial cost of going to doctors and whatever. It's like I haven't. We spend a lot of money on food, but we spend no money on our medical bills because we don't have any medical bills because we don't go to doctors because we don't need to, you know. Um, so I think there's a little bit of going to be friction there, and the market has to be changed. Supply chains have to be changed and whatnot. I think it's very daunting, but um, I don't think it's impossible. It's just that the issue I think is that you have to have both sides. You have to have the people that want it, and then you have to have the people who are willing to make and sell it. And those two sides need to be aligned. Um, consumers like to blame, oh, Frito Lay and these big companies, Pepsi and Coca Cola, are poisoning us. Um, they may be true, but also you're paying for it willingly out of your own pocket every time you go and buy one of their products. It's not the U.S. government who taxes us involuntarily. Uh, it is an optional transaction that we don't have to participate in. If everyone woke up tomorrow and decided to stop paying taxes, well, a lot of people go to jail. But if we all woke up tomorrow and stopped buying PepsiCo products, PepsiCo would go bankrupt or they would sell different products. You know, it's very simple. So I think it's two sides to this coin. The companies make what people want to buy. And so you need both. Making it is hard in its own right, but also convincing people to want to buy different things is also hard in its own right. But I don't think it's an insurmountable challenge, but certainly very. We're not close. We're not close yet. I'll say that.
So not only do we have, some health food companies popping up and sort of selling, as you said, quote unquote, health foods that are in, I don't know, I don't want to say they're trying to trick us, but they are an industry that is profiting off of like a certain type of person that's looking for that.
Right.
And then we have, the whole entire other side of the coin of like, it's cheap. And so like you can afford it and you don't have to, and your rent is, triple what it was before.
Yeah.
And so like, this is what you can do. I'm wondering, we've seen some very low level governmental regulations
Mm.
when it comes to some of the dyes.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you think there is a future in which the government is in some way regulating the seed oil industry.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Trump appointed this woman to be head of the USDA who was like a former something in the oil seed industry association, which is the seed oil association. Like literally, her resume background is like seed oil association, and so that's the USDA. It's I wouldn't say it's impossible. Like I didn't think RFK a year ago. I didn't even about a year ago. Like I couldn't even have imagined that he would show up and start talking about things the way he did, and then end up in the position he's in. So I suppose it's not impossible, but there's definitely room for the government to work in because um, the government does stuff that helps the bad food producers. So like they could just start with not doing that. They don't need to give handouts to like organic farmers. I'm not saying that, but they should probably stop giving handouts to like chemical farmers. That would be one place to start. So after World War II, during World War II, the government did not want farmers to stop growing crops because we needed the food to support the war, and so the government started giving subsidies, just like paying farmers to grow certain food products. And after the war ended, no one wanted that. The farmers didn't want that to stop, and so it continued, and it continues to this day. And so, yes, we can say Frito Lay is cheap and Coca Cola is cheap, and all these things are cheap. Well, they're cheap because their inputs are subsidized by the U.S. government, aka paid for by your tax dollars. So people don't realize that, like, if you're not a Coca Cola drinker, ironically enough, you're still paying Coca Cola because your tax dollars go to the farm subsidies, which make commodity inputs that Coca Cola buys cheaper, so they pay less than they would have otherwise. AKA, you're paying Coca Cola, which is kind of the perverse part of all of this. So I think there's certain. I would say the more impactful thing would be removing those sort of economic incentives from the actual farmers themselves to grow horrible things, and instead give them, if you give them nothing, or give them incentives to grow better things. That'd be a nice place to start.
Yeah.
Regulating food additives, I think, is good, but the problem with this is it's always whack-a-mole. I think RFK has talked about this a bit. In Europe, if you want to add a new thing to a food, you have to like go and prove that it's safe first, which is still subject to a lot of corruption and bad science, but at least you have to do the work and people have to talk about it. Now in the U.S., we have a different system where you can just invent a new chemical, decide that it's safe. You just to say to yourself, "Hey, this is safe enough. I'm going to put it in my food," and then the FDA will only ever investigate it unless someone sues you because they claim it's unsafe. And no one, and that's a very rare thing. And if it happens after like decades of use and a whole bunch of people that like getting sick. So RFK has talked about ending that system and going into the European model where you have to prove in advance that it is safe, which I think is would actually be um, a pretty big help. But at the same time, it would help, but it's not going to be everything, right? The government's unfortunately the government's hands are limited by the industry and its dynamics itself because if you decide this ingredient's legal, well, guess what? A lot of people who have a job at a company making that ingredient are going to be unemployed, and a whole bunch of stuff's going to go haywire. So, but you can say, yeah, is it worth it or not? Like, that's a question, of course. But my main point here is that it's not so simple. Although I do think there are things they could do.
Hey, you.
Thanks for getting in touch with the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast.
We love your questions and adore hearing from you.
Leave us a hello,
A burning question,
feedback,
or anything else you want to share with us on the podcast.
We will play your message live on air if we can.
Thanks for being an amazing friend. Stay safe and moving.
So if we cannot, and I think most people feel that they cannot fully trust that the FDA is regulating what we are eating in a way that is serving our best interests and with our health in mind, we have to take this into our own hands, and we're going to have to go to the grocery store every week. We have to eat 3 times a day. It's like something that I'm like wishing science could like get beyond, because I find it very inconvenient to like have to stop and be hungry all the time. But we have to do this. We have to do it multiple times a day, and we have to find a way to not be kneading sourdough at 1 a.m. when like that's just, it's not practical.
Yeah.
So can you walk me through some practical tips for how to grocery shop, what brands we should be looking for, how we should be like interpreting the ingredient list as compared to the nutrition label?
Right. Yeah, a few things. So I think, I can tell you what I do or what we do. My wife,
Okay.
sometimes me, go to the farmers market on Saturdays or Sundays. There are farmers markets available. Some are better than others, of course. But we get most of our food for the week at the farmers market. And so that is meat. It's usually frozen. That goes in the freezer. Easy enough. It's also even easier. Go find a rancher and buy half a cow. It'll cost you like $3 or $4 a pound, and you will never have to go to the grocery store and buy meat ever again, or at least for the next 6 months until you eat your cow. So, like, there's a strategy. If you have a spare chest freezer, so that's something you could do. Saves a lot of time. Um, but you go to the farmer's market, we buy most of what we need for the week: produce, meat. Meat stays frozen. My wife cooks most of the vegetables and like in the first few days of the week, and then we have them in the fridge or frozen for for the remainder of the week. Um, a few grocery store trips to buy things like, say, olive oil, which does not grow the farmer or not sold at the farmers market by me because I live in New Jersey. They don't grow olives in New Jersey. Things like olive oil, things like I know we like certain chocolate. I really like the brand Hue chocolate. So there's nothing wrong with candy or anything, right? It's just the ingredients. And so if you look at the chocolate bar section, what is soy lecithin? What is like this weird erythritol? What is all this crap? Hue is the only, well, not the only, but like the most widely available, reliable brand of chocolate that I think has like a very clean label. I mean, it's literally like things that you could go buy as ingredients, which I mentioned before. There's no like, who's ever bought soy lecithin? Oh yeah, my grandma's cupboard. Let me go pick up the soy lecithin. Oh honey, can you get me the soy lecithin out of the cupboard? Said no one ever. So we buy that. Like certain dried mangoes, like I don't know, accessories. They just don't make up a core component of our diet, but it's like nice to have things that if you find a brand that you like at a grocery store, you can do pretty well. You just have to be very discriminating with how you read labels. And I think the main thing to look at is go through the list of ingredients. Do you know what they are? And would you be able to buy those things elsewhere in the store if you had to? So if you look at the chocolate list and it says soy less, then you ask yourself, hey, can I go and buy soy less than in this store? No, then don't buy it. Right. Um, and so you do that with chips. Obviously, I sell tortilla chips and potato chips. They're not available in all stores, although we will be in one of the major natural retailers very soon, in a few months. And then by the end of next year, they should be available pretty much everywhere, Whole Foods, whatnot, etc. But until then, there are some more or less better options. But the what other categories are there? Like a lot of things that like you should just probably not even be eating, like breakfast cereal. Why are we eating breakfast cereal? Just like have yogurt and berries or like eggs or something. I don't know. Um, what other tips and brand? I really think I don't want to like sound like I'm recommending too many brands. Like this is not an advertisement, but the thing you should be looking at is, do these ingredients exist? Like, are they real food ingredients that have been around for a while and my grandma would have in her cupboard? That's it. And okay, once you find those things, just don't deviate. That's another thing.
Right.
The grocery store and it's like, oh, let's try that. Let's try that. Like, find your brand of chocolate, find your brand of chips, find your brand of juice or whatever, find your brand of coffee, find your brand of protein bars, which there are some pretty good ones available now, mostly online. You can buy certain niche products online too. Prima bars and Prime bars, two different companies, but they're both pretty good. Protein bars, if that's your thing. Beef sticks, you can find online or in grocery stores. Like, I don't know, there's just find the brand that you like, the one that tastes good to you and has ingredients that meet the criteria I already described, where like, did your grandma have it in her cupboard? Organic, if at all possible, because it's just not perfect, but it's like lower pesticide and other chemical stuff. Go to the farmer's market one trip a week, um, and find your routine and basically don't really deviate from it unless you want to. And you're like going to, you like exploring and reading labels. But I would say just find the things that work for you and just never get anything else, honestly.
I think that's a really good way to like I think it's an intimidating process
Mhm.
at first when you're looking at like, oh my God, everything's killing me and my pantry is full of death.
Mhm.
And now I have to go and figure this all out. And it's going to, how am I going to do this? Like, it's a very overwhelming process.
Right.
But I think so much of the work is front loaded
Yeah, you do
in
it
the
once.
once you find your things,
Mhm.
then it's just like clockwork every week. I just reload my Instacart. Like,
Well, there you
yep,
go.
all those things again.
Again, and it's like maybe it's not exciting, but like who cares? I mean, our like we're so lucky to be able to have all any even half of this stuff at any given time of the year, right? When like my wife's grandma grew up in rural Virginia on like a farm in the early 1900s, and for Christmas they got like oranges sent to them from their relatives in Florida because like that was the one time a year they could have fruit. Well, that kind of fruit, you know, like we can, like that's insane, right? So we're like, oh, but I had this yesterday, or like, come on, man, like get over it, you know. Um, I think once you front load that work and you get like read everything in your pantry, read every label, look at every ingredient, take 5 hours to do it. If you don't know what it is, ask ChatGPT. It's very simple nowadays. You can easily ask like, hey, Chat, what is this ingredient? Where does it come from? Get rid of all the ones that are weird and bad and have like fake stuff in them. Then go to the grocery store, spend another 2 hours, find a mayo you like. Primal Kitchen's a good brand. Find a ketchup you like. Find a soy sauce. Find all those like a butter, a jam, all these things. Write down what brands they are, and then when you run out, just buy them again. And then that's kind of it, honestly. But yeah, you're right. It's front loaded work, and once you do it, it's a routine. But you have to do it at some point.
Yeah, it's very repeatable.
Yeah.
Yeah, very repeatable and not intimidating beyond that like first kind of hurdle. Um, what has been the most rewarding thing for you since starting your company? You've now taken this from, a hobby and a passion into something that is your literal work. What has been the most rewarding thing for you thus far in the journey of starting your brand? And what kind of gets you up every morning to continue this work?
Uh, the first question, I think I really enjoy the fact that okay, so our potatoes, for example, it's a very special niche variety of potatoes. It's organic, so they're not widely available. I can't call up the potato supplier and just like order those potatoes. They have to be like contracted in before the growing season, and the farmer's got to go rent the land that's organic certified, and then plant the crop, and then go and harvest it a few months later, and then that's my potatoes for the rest of the year. But I think that's cool because there's like hundreds of acres of farmland in Idaho being used to farm organic potatoes because of us. That would not be otherwise. Like it would be just sitting around. Who knows what they'd be putting on it? Whatever. So I think like and this farmer that we worked with, like the first year he worked with us, the size of his business more than doubled just by working with us. And I think that's really cool. So to fix the land, everyone talks about the farming and the farmers or whatever. It's like they're not going to just farm stuff that no one's buying, you know. But if you can be the one, if through the vehicle of a company, obviously I can buy more food than any human or any individual human ever possibly would. But because we get to make that much quality food, we get to like pay farmers to grow better food and take care of land better, which I think is very cool and would not have it otherwise. As for why I get up every day, it's a good question. I kind of just like it's very exciting to just like win, you know, going back to the point previously, it's very daunting and the enemies are very large and very established and whatever. But because we grow so quickly, it's like there's continual progress. Even though we're really like tiny down here and they're all the way up here, it's like on a day-to-day basis, if you zoom in, we're making progress. And it's very exciting to just like continually make that happen and get closer and closer, which again, still far away, but it's happening.
I obviously any other entrepreneurs are near and dear to my heart. It is a unique person that goes out with a mission and does the thing and then wakes up every day and does it again and again and again, despite the fact that there are the Frito-Lays and the big enemies, and does it for all the right reasons. I am super excited for the ability to find these brands we have this incredible opportunity of this online space where
Oh
it's
yeah.
like, yeah, that's not available in my local grocery store, but like literally it can be here like later in the week
Yeah.
from halfway across the country. It's an incredible thing. And Ancient Crunches is in that subcategory. So I want to give you an opportunity to tell people where they can find the brand and what you guys are offering right now.
Sure. So we started off making tortilla chips, organic corn, fried in beef tallow. It's called Masa Chips, and you can get them at masachips.com, MASACHIPS.com. Then about 2 years in, we started doing potato chips, as I mentioned. Those are called something else. They're called Vandy Crisps, VANDYCRISPS.com. We have about almost probably 600 or 700 stores at this point, like small health food stores, like boutique kind of places that carry our products. But you can get them on Amazon. You can also get them on our websites. I believe that they're cheapest on our website, so do that. And I don't know if Rachel, if you have a code, but if you do, add that as well for discount on first purchase. And then we also recently started selling the tallow that we use ourselves for frying the chips. We sell the tallow in jars, and that's relatively new. I think we're out of stock right now because we're just getting started, but we did our first drop, if you will, a few weeks ago. And that's called Golden Age Fats, GOLDENAGEFATS.com. But yeah, we'll be seeing more of that. We're going to do a lard soon. We're going to do different types of tallow. So conventional grass-fed and organic grass-fed, the whole range. So obviously, prices vary, but it's still better than seed oils, even conventional tallow. So, and it tastes very good. We're going to do lard, and that's going to be in stores at some point, over the next 18 months. All of these things are going to come to stores like near you. But for now, they're probably in niche places, and it's easier to get them online.
I will say, we'll put the code in the show notes. I've tried the Masa Chips. They are delicious. It does not have to taste like cardboard in order to be healthy or free of additives or seed oils that you're looking to avoid. These are absolutely delicious. And I would even venture to say that they taste better.
Oh, yeah. Well, it makes sense. Because the additives, people think the additives aren't there to taste good. The additives are there to make it cheap, right? Everyone knows that the expensive, like the gourmet, whatever, like that is the better thing. It's just that it's more expensive, or they don't use the fake flavors because the fake flavors taste better either. It's just that real spices are really expensive. And so we have a Vandy flavor, French onion. I can't even believe it still to this day. I think it's our best flavor ever. I still can't believe it's only 3 ingredients. It's like shallots, onions, and black pepper. And it tastes like, I have no idea. It tastes like the most junky food of like Frito-Lay, Lay's seasoning, sour cream and onion, that kind of thing. Like, I just can't believe it's only 3 ingredients. But that's because the depth and richness of like the spices that are used is just so much higher than an artificial test tube ingredient. The complexity is there. And so yeah, when the right ingredients are used, the food tastes better. That's the key thing. The additives are not there to make it taste good. They're there to make it cheap, and maybe preservatives to make it last long. They're not there to make it taste better.
So if that isn't if you're a person who's motivated by taste, then like if that isn't the motivation that you need, these things are better than the garbage. And if you're a person motivated by health, then you're also, it doesn't have to be one or the other anymore. And I think that is what your brand and other brands that are really pioneering this space are showing people. And so I just want to thank you for coming on with us today. We're going to have a code in the show notes, so make sure you check out Ancient Crunch. It really is pioneering an industry that I think our audience is so ripe for. And I think that the more that this spreads, I think it's actually going to be the go-to for people once they realize that it doesn't have to be taste.
Yeah, you don't have that trade-off. You don't have to have that trade-off, taste or health. You can get both. So, very good.
Let's go. Thank you, Stephen. It was such a pleasure to speak with you today, and I really appreciate it. We will absolutely have your website in the show notes so everybody can get a taste for themselves.
Awesome.